Hello once again, YouTube. Major Tom 2417 here with the first of a series I like to call EpicStravaganza, covering the freeware games, legally freeware, released by Epic Megagames, later Epic Games. And we begin this journey with their very first release back in 1991, and later the first one to be released as freeware, ZZT. Now, by itself, ZZT doesn't seem to look like much, just from what you're seeing here. It's text mode graphics, the gameplay is very standard, you move around, you fire in the direction that you're moving, stuff like that. But what really made ZZT and its successor, Super ZZT, about which more later, stand out was the fact that you could use ZZT to create your own games, or game worlds, as they're called in the menu system. And Tim Sweeney, the one who created ZZT and who released it through Epic Megagames, would later go on to head Epic Megagames and Epic Games when it shortened its name to just Epic Games. So yeah, pretty consequential title for Epic, and perhaps the earliest released title of theirs to go freeware later on. In fact, the source code was released so that fans could keep the game and its engine and all the worlds created in it alive over the years. So there's that. I personally don't have a lot of experience playing ZZT. As a matter of fact, the first time I ever played it was for the recording of this very video that you're watching now, in case that wasn't painfully obvious enough already. And others have devoted more coverage to this game than I ever could. In particular, Chris Asic, aka Gemini, of the Pixel Musement channel and the creator of the Ancient DOS Games series, has done an entire video on ZZT and its successor, Super ZZT. I highly recommend you check out the Ancient DOS Games video on both of those titles if you intend to play ZZT or Super ZZT, or especially if you intend to create game worlds in either of those yourself. And while he hasn't covered the game itself, Civi11 did mention it in his video for Jill of the Jungle, although he pronounced it ZZT instead of ZZT, which was pretty funny every single time he did it. So yeah, ZZT was an interesting text mode game and game creation engine back in the early 1990s, and one of the first big success stories for Epic Megagames. The first of many such success stories, but that's another story for another day. Speaking of stories for other days, yes, ZZT is superficially similar to Croz from Apogee, but let's not go into that. So yeah, ZZT, interesting game. And of course, a game as successful as ZZT would need a follow-up. Such was the case with Super ZZT. Now, strangely enough, Super ZZT wasn't actually as successful as the original game, partially because the graphics were kind of squished compared to the original ZZTs, and honestly I don't know why it wasn't as successful. It had a few more features, it was supposed to be more advanced, but evidently fewer worlds were created in Super ZZT than were in the original ZZT. So that has to be taken into consideration. But both ZZT and Super ZZT live on in the form of source ports and emulators. In this case, Classic Zoo, which was used in the recording of ZZT and Super ZZT footage for the making of this video. And you can find Classic Zoo and Super ZZT and ZZT itself, or the last stable released version thereof, over at the Museum of ZZT. So for anyone who wants to get into creating worlds in ZZT and Super ZZT, or just playing them for the first time ever, the Museum of ZZT is the best place to start. And there are loads upon loads of worlds to choose from. Not so much for Super ZZT, but very much so for the original game. As far as game mechanics go, you have directionally moving tiles that move you in the way they're pointing. You have monsters represented by various symbols. You have signs you can read, keys you can pick up, gems you can grab to increase your health, power-ups to give you more ammunition for your as-yet unspecified weapon. As far as the world creation thing goes in ZZT and Super ZZT, I haven't tried that feature in either of them yet. So yeah, from what I understand, it is pretty straightforward, but I'm more familiar with things like the build engine editors. So, I might, in a future video, go back and try to create something in ZZT or Super ZZT. Not promising anything yet, but I might do it in a later video. Something to potentially look forward to there. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about ZZT and Super ZZT, both of which have since, as previously mentioned multiple times, become freeware, and can be acquired, as previously mentioned, from the Museum of ZZT. And once again, I highly recommend you check out the Ancient DOS Games video on ZZT for a far more in-depth look at ZZT and Super ZZT, because Chris Azek goes into far more detail about these things than I ever could. Also, several future entries in this EpicStravaganza series will have more in-depth stuff about my personal experience playing each of these games, because I do have personal experience playing several of the later entries in this series. For instance, Tyrion 2000, One Must Fall 2097, Jill of the Jungle, Zargon, Kilo Blaster, Unreal, Unreal Tournament. All of those I've played before, several of them, if not all of them, I've beaten before. But ZZT and Super ZZT, I haven't really delved into that much before this video. I got the source port and the games to capture footage for this video. And maybe it'll be a case like with Morrowind, where I started just to beat one quest and then went on to beat the entire game. Yes, I've beaten Morrowind since my Seasonal Gaming Challenge video was uploaded. But maybe with ZZT and Super ZZT, I'll go back and try to do something more with them, to create my own worlds, to actually beat the pre-included worlds, City of ZZT, Town of ZZT, stuff like that, on my own time. I don't know yet. Too early to tell. Whatever the case, ZZT and Super ZZT paved the way for every other game in this series. Jill of the Jungle, Zargon, Kilo Blaster, One Must Fall 2097, Tyrion 2000, all the way up to Unreal and Unreal Tournament. If ZZT hadn't been the success that it was, Epic may have just faded into the background like some of those fly-by-night shareware developers and publishers of the 1990s. But they didn't. ZZT was Epic's first big hit, and the hits just kept on coming through the 90s and beyond. But those are stories for other days. And that's going to be it for this video. Thank you all so very much for liking, watching, commenting, and subscribing. I hope you've enjoyed this first EpicStravaganza video and everything I've been doing on the channel thus far, and I hope you continue to enjoy the further releases in the EpicStravaganza series and everything I continue to do on this channel in the days, weeks, months, and years to come. This is Major Tom 2417, signing out.